Hey Woodhaven family, and welcome back to the Journey 24/7 podcast. This is Chandler here with you again, and I'm so excited to dive into another day of our study together in Genesis chapter 38. This is one of those chapters that, like a lot of the other ones we've looked at so far, is difficult just because there's so much rampant sin in it. We've talked about that, how from the moment sin entered into the world, things just were tainted. And we see the effects of that constantly in this narrative. But here we open up in this chapter in Judah, who, if you remember, was one of Joseph's brothers and was actually the one that had the idea to sell him into slavery. Well, Judah here, he goes and he finds a wife. And he finds this wife and he has 3 sons with her. And then we fast forward to him trying to find a wife for his sons. And so he finds a wife for his first son, and her name is Tamar. This first son, whose name was was found to be wicked in the sight of the Lord, and so the Lord put him to death. Now, it was customary at that time that if your brother passed away, that the next brother would actually come and fulfill that duty as husband. So he would have a child with the original brother's wife. So Judah goes and tells his other son, whose name was Onan, to go and take Tamar as his wife. And so he goes and he goes to fulfill that duty, but he doesn't fulfill it because he doesn't want to actually have a child with Tamar, because he tells us here in verse 9 that Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. It would still be viewed as the offspring of his brother So he did not want to have this child with her, so he did not fulfill his duty in the correct way. And we see the response of that was it was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also. Well, now Judah is a bit freaked out, and he goes to Tamar and just tells her to remain a widow until his next son grows up, because he's scared of losing another son. So it says Tamar went and remained in her father's house, and in this time Judah's wife also passed away. And it says after that he had been comforted, he went up to Timnah to sheep shear. Well, Tamar hears about this and was told, your father-in-law is going to Timnah to shear his sheep. So it says she took off her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil, wrapping herself up. So she's concealing her identity at this point. And it says when Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He turned to her at the roadside and said, "Come, let me come in to you," for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. So Tamar says, "Well, what will you give me?" And Judah says, "A young goat from the flock." Well, she says, "If you give me a pledge until you send it." And then he asks, "Well, what pledge shall I give you?" She tells him, "Your signet and your cord and your staff that is in your hand." So she's wanting a way that she can identify him, that she can show and have proof of who did this. So Judah agrees, and they sleep together, and she conceives by him. Well, a little bit later on, Judah hears about Tamar being pregnant. It says that Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has been immoral. Moreover, she is pregnant by immorality. So Judah hears this, and we see the hypocrisy of him here at first, where he says, "Bring her out and let her be burned." So he's angry at her because she was immoral. Meanwhile, he was ignoring his own immorality. So it says she was brought out, and she sent word to her father-in-law, "By the man to whom these belong, I am pregnant." And she said, "Please identify who these are, the signet and the cord and the staff." So she brings it and says, "Identify this," knowing that it was Judah all along. So Judah identified them, and he says, "She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son." And he did not know her again. So this is an important turning point for Judah, because he recognizes that he was immoral too, and he even refers to her as being more righteous than himself. It was humbling for him. It brought him down. It made him recognize his own sin. You see, this is a part that we can all relate to. Obviously, all of our stories are different. But if we're following after the Lord, we've all had that moment where we just recognize that we are a sinner, that we are not righteous on our own, that in our own flesh, there is nothing righteous about us, that we are only made righteous through the blood of Christ on the cross and his resurrection. That's where our righteousness comes from. So when we recognize that, we have the same idea where we humble ourselves and we realize just how great God is. And here it leads to a transformation in Judah. He doesn't kill her. He recognizes how she is more righteous than him, and it says he did not know her again. He did not continue to pursue this because he recognized his own sin. Then we see when the time of her labor came, there were twins in her womb. So she's pregnant with these twins, and it says that when she went into labor, one put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." But as she drew back his hand, behold, his brother came out. And she said, "What a breach you have made for yourself." Therefore she called his name Perez. Afterward his brother came out with the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. So this is a really interesting birth story here, where we see that Zerah was originally coming out first, but then almost at the last second, Perez came and was born first. And it's important that we remember these names, because this is going to have a really big impact later on. We're going to see in Matthew chapter 1 how Perez was in the genealogy of Christ. So Judah is extremely important. Judah, we see him how he had this life that he messed up. He had struggles. He did something that was despicable here, but the Lord still used it for his glory. The Lord still used it in the genealogy of Christ. There's a lesson in there that the Lord is constantly using broken people, broken things, broken situations for his glory. It's a consistent theme that we're seeing all throughout the scriptures. And I was going to say the Old Testament, where we see it all throughout the scriptures. And we still see it today, where the Lord uses broken situations to bring himself glory. Because our God is that good. He's that powerful. He's that loving, and he's that kind. Rest in that today. Reflect on that. And we'll see you back here tomorrow as we jump into Genesis